Snow White gets her name not from the fairness of her skin, as we obviously know. She gets her name from surviving a snowstorm.
Rachel Zegler, like so many kids raised on TikTok, she's all for infantada is the only global solution. Of course, like with everything on the left these days, they just take it too far.
So she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
So the two stars hate each other. This is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive.
Now you wash the dishes. You tidy up the room. You clean those cobwebs. And he'll use the broom. Whistle while you work. And cheerfully together we can tidy up the place.
In the original Snow White, she cleans the cottage after woodland animals take her there. When she learns the 7 dwarves live there, she offers to cook and clean the place for them as a sign of her gratitude. But in this one, she breaks in and then forces the dwarves to clean for her. So clearly the Barbie screenwriter they hired to write this film thinks that this is a clever kind of role reversal. Funny that making a feminist version of a character always means, in practice, just turning her into an unpleasant, unlikable nag.
Never trusted a first reaction by anybody in the media. Please go look at the list of names of people who hyped this up as a good movie and make sure you never take their opinions seriously ever again.
Rachel Zegler was handpicked by Disney to lead their Snow White remake. She had the golden ticket, a multi-million-dollar role, and the chance to be a new generation's princess. But instead of winning hearts, she set the internet on fire, and not in a good way. From controversial tweets to disastrous interviews, Zegler's downfall was as dramatic as the film's box office failure.
Rachel Zegler, she's an asshole.
That's one interview clip that you read the quote from, but she's gone on to talk about this film numerous times, how she once thought Snow White was creepy, she doesn't like the prince, she thinks she should get paid more because she has to wear that dress, she should get paid for streaming, for every hour she has to wear the dress. I mean, talk about biting the hand that feeds you.
So she came out and took a large dump on half of the country, everyone who voted for Trump.
President Rachel Zegler also posted, F Trump kinds of posts on social media. She also said that she hoped that Trump supporters, quote, never know peace.
And then she came out and she said, I apologize. Like, I went too far. But it wasn't sincere. Oh my God.
So how did Disney's $270 million gamble turn into one of the biggest flops in history? The Snow White remake was supposed to be a blockbuster, but instead it broke records for all the wrong reasons. It had one of the lowest openings for a Disney live-action remake, with Rotten Tomatoes scoring at 42%, IMDb giving it 1.610, and Metacritic dropping to 1.2. Audiences didn't just dislike the film, they hated it. The backlash started before the movie even hit theaters. Disney's official trailer became one of the most downvoted in YouTube history. Fans weren't just upset about the casting or the changes to the classic story, they were furious at Zegler herself. Rachel Zegler didn't just play Snow White, she redefined her, and not in a way that fans wanted. Instead of celebrating the fairy tale's romance and adventure, Zegler mocked the original 1937 film, calling it outdated and sexist. In interviews,
the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird. She's not going to be safe with the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
She bragged about removing the love story, saying that Snow White was now an independent leader who didn't need a prince. Fans weren't buying it. They accused her of destroying a beloved classic to push a modern feminist agenda. The internet erupted, with people asking, if you hate Snow White so much, why take the role?
But you don't seemingly like your own character, so she comes off as an insufferable, whiny brat.
If things weren't bad enough, Zegler's political opinions made them worse. She made headlines for controversial tweets, including a pro-Palestine post right after promoting the movie. Fans were shocked. Disney was furious. Reports say they sent a producer to beg her to delete it. She refused. Things escalated when Zegler attacked Trump supporters, telling them to F off and urging her followers to vote for Kamala Harris. In an industry that depends on audiences of all backgrounds, alienating half the country was a bold and costly move.
But you are not entitled to call for Trump supporters to be harmed. Like, you are actually not entitled to do that. And so let me just remind you, Rachel Zegler, of what the map looks like, just so you can understand when your Disney movie is coming out, how many people you are wishing harm upon. Like, this is America right now. I will love you through these 4 years as best I can. F Donald Trump. Yeah, totally stable thing for her to be posting, wishing harm upon Trump voters, wishing that we have no peace.
Behind the scenes, Disney went into damage control mode. They even hired a social media consultant to follow Zegler around and stop her from making more PR mistakes. But it was too late. The damage was done. Even industry insiders turned on her. Jonah Platt, son of one of the film's producers, publicly called her out, saying she hijacked the movie's marketing with her personal politics. But Zegler didn't back down. Instead of apologizing, she doubled down on her activism, acting like she did nothing wrong. As if things weren't messy enough, Disney replaced the Seven Dwarfs with CGI characters, a move that sparked even more outrage. The dwarfism community, who had been waiting for roles like this, felt betrayed.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs, finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarfs want to work. That many scripts that come down the pike.
No, it's 7 of them.
That has, and there's seven dwarf jobs here. But because I think it was Peter Dinklage said this is, this is not right to...
The 7 dwarfs of Snow White have, of course, all just disappeared, and now they're the 7 dysfunctional men, I assume.
I guess, what are we going to have? Like a lesbian, a trans person, someone in a wheelchair, someone of color? Like, I don't understand. Why weren't the dwarfs enough? But apparently they were too offensive because the most famous dwarf of all, Peter Dinklage, said something negative about it back in 2022, thus ruining the biggest acting roles the dwarfs had ever seen since the creation of Willy Wonka's Oompa Loompas back in the 1970s.
They couldn't have dwarves. Do you guys remember?
Yeah, because Peter Dinklage and all them were talking crap.
So originally they
took a picture of what the dwarves were supposed to look like?
I can find it, but it was an array. It was the DEI of
dwarves.
Yep. Well, they had to reshoot the film and use CGI dwarves. There you
So
go.
those guys didn't make it.
No.
That guy's 6'2". That's sleepy, that's drunky, that's cokehead.
But you're joking.
It looked like Santa.
Argument should have been from Peter Dinklage. There's power of being on TV. There's power of television. And to put 7 people with dwarfism on camera in a major Disney movie, there's still power there. If the story is offensive, change the story. Don't change the characters.
The modern empowered Snow White won't even allow domestic labor carried out by herself. Instead, she orders the dwarves to tidy up themselves, even when they've had a hard day down the mine.
It's their house.
But it's so obvious now because of the blight of intersectionality that's spread throughout our entire society that we can't have a woman holding a broom. Not that Rachel Zegler would know what to do with a broom other than fly on it.
They're remaking the movie. They just got rid of the dwarfs. Okay,
but what do they call them?
Why
now,
would they
too?
get rid of the dwarves, though?
Magical creatures.
But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures. You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it.
And they were like, what? We just want to work. We're dwarves. So, ho, ho, ho.
And fans blamed Peter Dinklage, who previously called traditional dwarf roles offensive. But critics pointed out the irony. Dinklage made millions playing a dwarf in Game of Thrones, yet suddenly decided no one else should. Between the Snow White rewrite, the CGI dwarfs, and Zegler's behavior, the film was doomed before it even premiered.
I'm guessing that she's not married. I'm guessing that she doesn't have kids. The movie is a complete disaster, by the way.
Just in, an enormous cultural failure, Disney's Snow White, which cost $250 million, raked in a miserable $43 million during its premiere, and that's from the AP.
Rachel Zegler was once Hollywood's rising star. She won a Golden Globe for West Side Story and had the world at her feet. Now, she's being blacklisted. Industry experts say her career may never recover. Even Megyn Kelly declared her Hollywood run done. The numbers don't lie. Disney spent $270 million on this movie. Analysts say it needed $500 million to break even. Instead, theaters were emptier than the evil queen's heart.
The movie has a major identity crisis.
The movie is doing catastrophically. They spent $300 million and it currently has a 2.2 out of 10 rating on IMDb. By the way, is not a good actress, never should have been cast for this role. I mean, you could just look at her, you say, that's not Snow White. I mean, come on.
The Snow White disaster has Hollywood rethinking everything. Is this the final nail in the coffin for Disney's live-action remakes? Are audiences done with Hollywood's woke rewrites? One thing's for sure, Rachel Zegler thought she could rewrite a fairy tale. But in the end, the only thing she changed was her career. What do you think? Did Disney doom Snow White from the start? Or did Rachel Zegler ruin her own chances? Let me know in the comments.